The keys to the cabin felt like a ticket to freedom. For $185,000, 40 years of work were converted into 800 square feet of timber and solitude, 12 miles from civilization. The first sight for elk grazing near the porch confirmed I had bought peace. I called my daughter, Beulah, and shared the good news. She sounded happy for me, but mentioned her husband, Cornelius, was stressed. An hour later, the phone rang. It was Cornelius. He skipped the formalities. My parents lost their house. They're moving in with you for a couple months until they find a place. Wait, what? Cornelius, I just bought this place. It's barely. Then you should have stayed in Denver. Friday morning, I'll text you their arrival time. The line went dead. My knuckles were white. For 40 years, I'd been the peacemaker, but not anymore. I pulled out my engineering pad, not to vent, but to calculate a solution. Dawn found me still at the table, my mind sharp, focused, and ready. My plan was swift and methodical. I drove back to Cody and visited the local authorities. Yellowstone Ranger Station. I spoke to a ranger, feigning the naivete of a newcomer. I took careful notes on wolf behavior, territory, and sense of smell. I learned that wolves can detect prey or food from miles away. Outdoor supply store. I bought 2 motion-activated wildlife cameras with night vision and cellular connectivity, paying cash. Butcher shop. I bought 20 pounds of beef scraps, organ meat, and fat trimmings, powerful stinking attractants. That afternoon, I set the trap. Camera installation. I positioned the cameras with precision, one covering the driveway, one aimed at the porch, connecting them to my phone's single bar of cell service. The bait, I walked 30 yards upwind from the cabin and placed the meat in 3 piles, ensuring maximum scent dispersion. I was calculated, not malicious. I was setting a boundary, not a death trap. I locked up the cabin, left the thermostat low, and drove back to my old house in Denver to wait. Friday morning at 10 a.m., a sedan appeared on my phone screen. Leonard and Grace, Cornelius's parents, emerged, their faces set in expressions of displeasure and judgment. This is where he's living now. Grace wrinkled her nose. We'll stay a few months, Leonard stated. Let Cornelius figure out the next step. Then Grace froze. Leonard, wolves. 3 gray and brown shapes emerged from the tree, moving with cautious purpose toward the meat piles. Leonard went white. Get in the car. Get in the car now. They scrambled back into the sedan. Gravel sprayed as they reversed wildly and then accelerated down the driveway. The wolves, unbothered, began feeding on the scraps. I watched the entire event on my laptop, closed it, and took a slow sip of coffee. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. What did you do? Cornelius's voice was stripped of its business facade, replaced by fury. My parents nearly got attacked. You set this up. You baited those animals. I didn't do anything, I said calmly. I live in wolf country. Wolves live here. This is their home. Maybe you should have asked before assuming you could use mine. You're insane. You're going to what? Sue me because wildlife exists on my property? Good luck with that. No, I corrected. It's just beginning. I hung up. 2 weeks passed. I enjoyed the peace, but the quiet felt conditional. Mid-April, Beulah called, her voice thin with tears, clearly coached by Cornelius. Dad, please. Cornelius showed me the footage of the wolves. You knew they were coming. You could have done something to make it safer. I bought this property for solitude, I said. But I'm willing to meet with Leonard and Grace to discuss options. You are? Really? Hope flooded her tone. I'll meet them in town. Neutral ground. We'll talk. 2 days later, I drove to Cody. I had prepared everything. Comparable rental prices for rural Wyoming, 3 copies of a standard short-term rental agreement, and a presentation practice to be firm but not hostile. I chose a table at the Grizzly Peak Cafe. Back to the wall, clear view of the entrance, and within the range of the security camera above the register. I was ready. I ordered black coffee and waited. Leonard and Grace sat across from me, their impatience palpable. Ray, this has gone on long enough. We need those keys today, Leonard demanded. I slid the rental agreement across the table, tapping it once. I agree, which is why I prepared a proposal. Leonard's face reddened. A rental agreement? You're charging us rent? Market rate for a furnished property in this area. $1,200 monthly, 6-month lease, standard terms. You want money from your own family? Greedy, Grace accused, leaning forward with a wounded expression. I stood, collected my folder, and picked up my coffee cup. Then I guess we don't have an agreement. You'll need to find alternative housing. That's not my problem to solve. Good afternoon. I drove home, leaving them stranded and defeated. That evening, Cornelius launched his campaign. Calls came from cousin Linda and a former colleague, all repeating the same script. Ray is isolated, acting strangely, and refusing to help family. He was building a narrative to establish my mental decline. Then Beulah called, angry and exhausted. You embarrassed them in public. A rental agreement? Dad, their family. And this is my home, my retirement, my one place of peace, which I bought with money I saved for 40 years, I countered quietly. She hung up. I realized Cornelius wasn't just trying to take the cabin. He was trying to destroy my credibility. I immediately emailed David Thornton, attorney at law, seeking legal advice on asset protection and potential conservatorship claims. 3 days later, Beulah called again, stressed, and inadvertently revealed the truth. Cornelius is so stressed. Leonard was playing poker online. Lost $47,000 over 6 months. That's why they lost the house. And he keeps talking about solutions, about putting your cabin in a family trust so it could benefit everyone. Every word was a piece clicking into place. At my meeting with David Thornton, I presented my meticulously organized documentation. Thornton's assessment was clear. Your son-in-law is attempting to establish grounds for claiming you're incompetent. The solution is to prove conclusively that you are managing your affairs competently. We need a revocable living trust with an independent trustee. The cost was $2,400. I agreed immediately. After leaving his office, I went to the public library and accessed public records. I found that Cornelius had taken out a $35,000 home equity line of credit, Hellick, on their house 8 months ago, using only his signature, which Beulah was unaware of. The financial dominoes were clear. Leonard's gambling debt, $47,000, Cornelius's hidden Hellick, $35,000, financial desperation scheme to acquire my cabin. 3 weeks later, in early June, I drove back to Thornton's office to sign the trust documents. The Revocable Living Trust designated Thornton as the independent trustee, protecting my $290,000 in assets, the cabin and retirement funds. The critical provision on page 17 was a final safeguard for my daughter. Beulah inherits only if divorced from Cornelius, Oregon, if Cornelius signs a legal waiver of claims to the property. This just protects her from being exploited through my property, I told Thornton. My signature was steady. The notary seal was applied with a satisfying click, structural integrity, legal addition. I spent the rest of the week methodically calling financial institutions, changing all beneficiaries to the new trust. When asked why, I gave the same factual, emotionless answer: asset protection and estate planning. I have concerns about third-party claims. I was no longer just defending my cabin. I was systematically dismantling Cornelius's entire financial scheme and protecting Beulah from his cornered desperation. You should anticipate aggressive legal and emotional escalation from Cornelius, who is now cornered. Your immediate legal countermove should be to formally document your competency via a medical evaluation, preempting his inevitable attempt to challenge your autonomy. Cornelius views the trust as a direct, non-negotiable threat to his financial survival. When he discovers the provision tying Beulah's inheritance to divorce or his waiver, his reaction will be one of a cornered animal. Aggressive confrontation. He will attempt to intimidate you into revoking the trust, as demonstrated by his aggressive arrival and trespass onto your property. Legal/emotional threats. He'll threaten to isolate Beulah from you, make sure you never see Beulah again, and launch a legal attack on your competency and autonomy. The medical evaluation with Dr. Patricia Chun confirms mental competency, comprehensive cognitive testing, MMSE, clock drawing, memory recall. Confirms I am mentally competent, physically healthy, fully capable of managing his own affairs and making independent decisions. Legal documentation. Dr. Chin provided a formal letter on clinic letterhead specifically for legal purposes, ready to be submitted to any court challenging my trust. As anticipated, Cornelius and Leonard filed a false complaint with Adult Protective Services, APS, using the standard playbook. False claims, alleging I threatened family unfounded, exhibit paranoid behavior, the cameras, and refuse medical care. Goal, force a mandatory evaluation and establish grounds for conservatorship. The counter-move, I immediately provided Margaret Willow's APS with Dr. Chen's recent comprehensive medical evaluation and documentation of my sound financial management trust documents. Result, the APS case was closed as unfounded. Margaret's report stated, subject is competent, living independently and safely. Complaint appears motivated by family property dispute rather than genuine welfare concerns. Thornton's investigation revealed that Leonard and Grace were using my cabin address for official correspondence, including the Wyoming Department of Family Services and a First Mountain Credit Union bank account. The evidence I retrieved and photographed the mail, Wyoming Department of Family Services, Social Security Administration, addressed to them at my property, despite my camera footage proving they do not live there. The crime. This constitutes mail fraud, benefits fraud, and potentially identity theft, all federal crimes. The nuclear option. I worked with Thornton to compile the evidence and report it to Assistant U.S. Attorney James Morrison in the Economic Crimes Division. Morrison confirmed sufficient evidence for a federal investigation. I'm not trying to ruin their lives, but I won't allow my property to be used for fraud. This legal move destroys Leonard and Grace's credibility and redirects legal consequences onto them. During the investigation, Thornton discovered the final piece. Cornelius and Beulah's home has 3 missed mortgage payments and a notice of default filed $8 for $100 in arrears. Cornelius's desperation to acquire my cabin was not just to pay off the Hellick $35,000 and Leonard's debt $47,000. It was to stop the foreclosure on his own home. The battle is no longer about my peace. It's about Cornelius's survival. He is financially cornered, his parents face federal charges, and his wife is unknowingly hours away from losing her home. Ray, this explains his desperation, Thornton said. He was counting on your cabin to solve his financial crisis. When your trust blocked that plan, he had no backup. The implication was clear. Cornelius's own home was at risk. Thornton presented an unconventional option. Purchase the defaulted debt on Beulah's house anonymously through an LLC. This would give me complete leverage over Cornelius and crucially allow me to protect Beulah from losing her home. I spent a night weighing the moral complexity of controlling my son-in-law's future against the certainty of my daughter losing her home. The next morning I called Thornton. Do it. Buy the debt. But Beulah can't know yet. The transaction took a week. Mountain Holdings LLC became the new, anonymous creditor on Beulah's mortgage. I transferred $31,000 from my savings to gain control of the loan. By mid-August, I had absolute control. Leonard and Grace faced federal investigation. Cornelius's mortgage was mine. My assets were safe. The time for warfare was over. It was time for honesty. I texted Beulah, honey, we need to talk. Can you come to the cabin this weekend? Just you. It's important. Beulah arrived on Saturday. I set up the evidence folder on the kitchen table, preparing chicken salad sandwiches, her childhood favorite, for the painful conversation ahead. Dad, what's going on? She asked, her eyes drawn to the folder. I got straight to the point. Your house is in foreclosure. 3 months of missed mortgage payments. The bank was about to take your home. Her denial was immediate, but I countered by sliding the notice of default across the table. This says the loan was sold to Mountain Holdings, LLC. Who is that? That's me. I bought your debt from the bank. Instead of the bank foreclosing, I control the debt now. She was shocked, confused, and angry. Why didn't you just tell me the mortgage was behind? Would you have believed me? I needed leverage to protect you from what's coming next. Then, the second blow, the Hellick documents. 8 months ago, Cornelius took out a home equity line of credit for $35,000 against your house. Here's his signature. Where's yours? She realized he had covered Leonard's gambling debts and then, when that wasn't enough, simply stopped paying their mortgage. I showed her the rest. The recording of Cornelius's hostile confrontation, the false APS complaint, and the federal mail fraud evidence against his parents. When she saw the document where her husband tried to strip her father of his legal rights, she broke down in wrenching sobs. How long have you known? She whispered through tears. Pieces since May, everything since July. If I had told you in May with no proof, would you have believed me? I don't know. Probably not. I presented the final decision. You have until the end of August. That's about a week because federal agents are going to arrest Leonard and Grace within 2 weeks for fraud. When that happens, everything becomes public. What decision? Stay with Cornelius or leave him? If you leave Cornelius, file for divorce, protect yourself legally. I'll forgive the mortgage debt on your house. You'll own it free and clear. You're bribing me to leave my husband. I'm offering you a lifeline. Trust the documents. They don't lie, people do. She left overwhelmed, taking the folder of evidence with her. 5 days later, federal agents arrested Leonard and Grace. Beulah called, shaken, asking if I was involved. I simply stated, I reported crimes to the proper authorities. Cornelius called, screaming, but I handed the phone to Thornton, who professionally informed him that any defamation would result in immediate legal action. Cornelius, desperate, tried to sell his house, only to discover the title was encumbered by Mountain Holdings, LLC, my firm. Thornton delivered the final offer. Total debt forgiveness. $43,400 remaining mortgage balance plus arrears. Conditions. Cornelius must sign divorce papers with no asset claims, sign a legal waiver to my property/estate, and sign a sworn statement acknowledging his illegal actions. Deadline, 72 hours. Refusal meant immediate foreclosure. On Monday morning, Cornelius appeared at Thornton's office, disheveled and shaking. He signed every single document. That afternoon, Beulah called. Dad, I signed the divorce papers yesterday. I'm leaving him. I can't stay in that house. Can you help me find something near you? I want to start over. Of course, honey, we'll find you something perfect. I sat on my porch, the relief profound. The war was over. I had saved my daughter and reclaimed my peace. The elk grazed, the mountains stood eternal, and the silence was finally earned. The weight was lifting. Beulah was healing. The divorce was finalized, and my property was secure. The only thing left was to witness the final judgment and begin the work of building a new, shared peace. I attended Leonard and Grace's judgment hearing in a federal courtroom in Cheyenne. They looked diminished as the judge reviewed their overwhelming evidence of guilt for benefits fraud. The sentence was firm but spared them prison, 2 years of supervised probation, $45,000 in restitution and fines, and a permanent ban from federal and state benefit programs. I left the courthouse feeling closure, not triumph, as Leonard, defeated, looked away when our eyes met. Beulah later confirmed that Cornelius had moved to a small, cheaper apartment in Denver. He signed the final divorce papers in mid-September without a word, looking like a stranger, not angry, just empty. Beulah legally resumed her maiden name, Beulah Nelson. The immediate danger was over, and the work of rebuilding began. A new home. I helped Beulah find a charming 2-bedroom house in Cody, 15 minutes from my cabin. I provided the down payment, and she secured the mortgage using her own excellent credit and new teaching position at Cody Elementary. Rebuilding trust, we fell into a routine of Sunday dinners, rebuilding our relationship through practical acts of service like painting and assembling furniture. Her healing wasn't linear. She processed her grief and anger, and I simply listened without defending myself. During one dinner, she asked if she would ever trust again. I set down my knife. Trust isn't something you're supposed to give freely to everyone. It's earned slowly through consistent actions over time. Anyone worth having in your life will understand that. On a crisp late September evening, Beulah joined me at the cabin for dinner. We ate spaghetti and salad on the porch, watching a small herd of elk emerge to graze in the clearing. Beulah broke the silence, saying quietly, "Thank you, Dad, for everything. For fighting for me even when I didn't understand it. You don't need to thank me. You're my daughter. I'll always fight for you." "That was never an option," I replied. "This feels like home," she said, genuinely smiling for the first time in months. "It is home for both of us now." Later, alone on the porch, I reflected on the journey from March to September. I had been forced into warfare, but had navigated it without becoming cruel or abandoning my values. I used law and strategy to protect my daughter and my autonomy, ensuring the antagonists faced appropriate, non-destructive consequences. The retirement I'd planned, quiet evenings, mountains, and wildlife, was now better because it was shared with my daughter and earned through integrity. I stood and walked inside, ready to call Beulah just to say goodnight. Peace, hard-won and deeply appreciated, settled over the property like the September night. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the right. Thank you for watching.